The late Morrie Schwartz, who became an icon of wisdom and inspiration through the best-selling memoir Tuesdays with Morrie, continues to touch our hearts even after his passing. Joining us today is his son, writer, producer, and editor Rob Schwartz, who recently discovered a gem hidden in his father's desk. Rob, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I just got back from South Carolina. I had an amazing time.
Oh, well, we just missed you, but we're happy to have you here. And I take back what I said. This was not recently discovered. This was quite a few years back. Can you talk about this hidden gem?
Sure. It's a long story. I'll try and make it real short for you guys. I'm a journalist. I was living in Japan. I would go back and forth between Tokyo and our family house in Boston. This is years after my father passed away. And Tuesdays with Morrie was a gigantic #1 bestseller. And I just pulled open my father's drawer and I found a manuscript that I had actually talked with him about when he was writing it. He wrote this manuscript from 1989 to 1992. So I knew all about it, but I hadn't thought about it in years. And there it was in front of me. And Tuesdays with Morrie was now a huge hit, a huge bestseller. So I knew that I had an opportunity to do something with this manuscript.
Mm-hmm. And now, when was this published?
It was published in April of this year.
April, so fairly recent. And what is the name of this?
It's called The Wisdom of Morrie. It's a book that my father wrote about being like creative and joyful and experiencing the most out of life while you age. And it was actually written before Tuesdays with Morrie, right? Because Tuesdays with Morrie was actually written after my father passed away. So in some ways, this is the prequel to Tuesdays with Morrie, but in other ways, it's much more expansive. You know, my father was a professor, so he looks at things from a lot of different angles. He offers a lot of different ideas about aging, how to remain vibrant and creative while you age.
And now Tuesdays with Morrie has been coined as one of the best-selling memoirs of all time. Can you talk about that book?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this was such a revelation for our family. My father got ill and he started to talk about what was important in life, what true values were. You know, when you're facing death, you have a different perspective, and he got a fatal diagnosis of ALS. And his student, Mitch, came back and started meeting him. He only meant to meet him and say goodbye, but he was so riveted by what my father had to say, he met him for 14 consecutive weeks. And then after my father passed, he wrote Tuesdays with Morrie. So my father never saw it. Oprah discovered it. She put it on her Book of the Month club. It skyrocketed to #1 New York Times nonfiction hardback bestseller and stayed there for 5 years, #1 for 5 years.
Wow.
It's unbelievable. It was mind-blowing for us. Yeah.
That says it all. And now, can you talk a little bit about your father, Morrie?
Sure. My dad was a university professor. He absolutely loved to teach. He loved his students. He was a professor of sociology and social psychology, which meant he taught courses like group process. How do we deal with each other's in groups, and what of our image of ourselves and our image of other people? So obviously, these are kind of topics that people love to talk about. So students loved my dad, and he loved teaching. He taught for his whole life at the university. And then when he retired, he realized that aging was an incredibly important topic for people, and he wrote this manuscript, which we have now as The Wisdom of Morrie.
And now, something that is highlighted is, you know, to live vibrantly at any age. What are some ways that are discussed in this book about how to live vibrantly at any age?
So first of all, my father thought that humor was incredibly important. So he was like, please laugh and enjoy things that you find humorous as much as possible. He found it really disturbing that humor seemed to go out of the life of some people after a certain age. So that was the first thing. Then in complete opposite to that is meditation. He thought meditation was extremely important. It helps you calm down, focus your energy, just be more even keel. So he thought meditation was incredibly important. And it took him a long time to learn to meditate. He didn't take to it immediately. So if you don't find it easy, don't worry. Nobody does. Then he thought that it was really important to continue to grow and keep learning. Figure out what interests you and study that. You know, whatever it is, take classes, read about it, meet people who are interested in the same thing as you are, and learn more. It's incredibly important to keep learning, keep growing, not just stay in some static state. He thought it was extremely important to honor the relationships in your life, you know, the most important relationships, your family, the people you love, your friends, and also to make new relationships, to make new friends, to keep growing, basically. There's only a couple more. Let's see. He thought that, you know, we get distracted by so many things that are unimportant. Remember what's important in your life and focus on it. Certainly the things that I just mentioned. And lastly, and this is one that's, you know, very wide without any prescription, but he thought it was very important to develop a spiritual relationship, whatever that meant for you. Right? If it's organized religion, great. If it's something that's much more personal to you, great. But have some kind of spiritual connection, he thought was very important.
Absolutely. Well, Rob, thank you so much for joining us today. Wisdomofmorrie.com is where our viewers can go to learn more about this book and to purchase it. And hopefully next time you're in South Carolina, we can talk to you in person.
Most definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rob.